Nice.
We welcome them. Please come forward. Kagenza Rumongi from the mission of Rwanda to UN will be moderating this panel, and each one of the members will be introduced by him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alicio. I think one of the challenges of moderating a youth panel, I think by default you're suggesting the previous panel was the elders. You know? So I want to thank the elders for a fantastic panel. Sorry. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kagenza Rumongi. I'm a communication officer at the Rwanda mission to the UN. And again, on behalf of the mission, we want to say thank you for joining us. In my view, this is the more interesting panel. But really, we have very fantastic topics we're going to cover. And we're privileged to have two people who actually lived through the genocide against the Tutsi. And so I want to make my own interventions as brief as possible to allow you, the audience, to engage with them and ask questions. Because this is an appropriate time. We actually have two authors, and one, Celine Wineza, who's sitting in the middle, is in the US on a book tour. She published a book a few months ago. I'll just show it up here. A really powerful memoir, and she's also selling copies, and she'll sign for you a copy if you choose to purchase it. So after this, just when you walk out, there'll be a table right outside and you can purchase a copy. So Celine is an entrepreneur and very passionate about issues of mental health and also engaging young people about these issues. We have Melanie Kent, who's a program associate here at the American Jewish Committee. And she has a very interesting background. She grew up in Kenya, Tanzania, Laos. There's a whole host of places. So she has a very interesting background that she'll share with us from her perspective on the topics we'll be discussing. To my immediate right is a personal friend, Consoleni Shimwe, also an author. Did you come with any copies? Today, but her book, Tested to the Limit. I would really encourage all of you to look it up on Amazon. You can get a copy, and also to check her on YouTube and hear her personal testimony. We won't have time to get into the full story. So, to begin with, I'll start with you, Celine. You've come from the farthest, all the way from Rwanda. 25 years after the genocide. Thankfully, you're here with us. You're looking good. You're looking healthy. Just tell us your reflection, being a survivor and being able to share your story, being a young person today. What are the things that you're passionate about in terms of your message and your experience?
Thank you, and thanks for being here and for giving us time. Well, this year marks the first time that I'm able to share my personal story, and it has been an incredible journey. I wrote this memoir Untamed 2 years ago. I started to write through my therapeutical notes because I was going through a hard time of PTSD and depression, and it came up out of nowhere. It was triggered by an event that had happened in my family, and I thought I was doing okay because I was 10 years old when the genocide against the Tutsi happened. I lost my mother and my two sisters and my brother and several members of my family. But after the genocide, we had to go back to school and to life as we were constructing our nation and building our nation from scratch as all Rwandans. So life had to continue, and we invested a lot on education and building our country. And I was growing up, I was doing okay, and I was promoted throughout the years. I was working well, went through life challenges like any other person. But then 22 years after, my father, I survived with my father. He got very sick, and he was in a coma, and that's when it hit me, and I went through a very difficult time of depression and PTSD. I had to go through a psychiatric hospital to get treatment, and it was very, very strange for me and for people around me, because on the outside I was doing very, very well, but it came up out of nowhere, because I had never shared my story. I never had the opportunity or the time to grieve for my family, and that's when I started to write. I started to write notes for my therapy. I started to revisit the 10-year-old or a 10-year-old girl that was still in me, that couldn't grieve, and it's been an interesting journey from discovering what she was holding in her heart, to connect her with the 35 years old now and 32 years at that time, and to really share my personal story as a survivor, but also encourage other people to talk about what happened on a personal level, and also to take some time during the commemoration especially, and be able to cry and be able to visit good memories of our lost loved ones, because as I mentioned, going through life after the genocide had also developed something in me that I couldn't remember good memories of my mother, for example. I couldn't remember any good memory of her, because in my family we never talked about it, because it was very traumatizing for me to go back in those memories. But throughout the notes and the therapy, I was able to sit with my father and my brother, whom we survived together, and we talked about them. We talked about what was their lives before, what were the funny stories, and we recorded that and we shared with our friends and our families, and it had created such a great impact, because everyone who was reading what we were writing or the video, it was more of a calling for them also to share the story and document as a form of healing. So what I can say is, writing for me has healed me, and it's a message that I am carrying across, especially in my community, that we have to write and heal, but also preserve the memory. We'll talk about it later, but that has been my journey so far.
Thank you so much, and we'll build on that as we move along. Melanie, I was having a conversation with someone involved with the Holocaust education, and they were saying, most of the survivors of the Holocaust are now old, and many of them are passing away. So is there any work you're doing to connect between the experience in Rwanda with the Holocaust, to try to also because the messages are pretty much the same, messages of prevention, of denial, of hate speech, and so on. So maybe you can talk a bit more about your role at the Africa Institute.
Sure. And first, I'd like to say I'm very honored to be on this panel, and I think it's representative of the desire of this event that we have representatives of groups that are not automatically personally connected to these events and issues, and that's me, not having a Jewish background or a connection to Rwanda directly, but still finding these events to be incredibly important motivating factors to why I do the work I do today and how that's come about. So the Africa Institute is where I work within AJC. And AJC as a whole is focused on Jewish advocacy and advocacy for Israel, but is not limited there. It's also about promoting human rights and democratic values around the world. I think what binds that all together is this idea that anything that threatens one minority threatens all, and hate speech against anyone threatens everyone. And that, I think, is one of those very important underlying values behind AJC and the Africa Institute's work as well. So to touch about Holocaust remembrance and genocide, AJC has been very focused on Holocaust. I think you heard in Dr. Marion Bergman's comments some of our Human Rights Institute's work. When it comes to AJC more broadly, we do advocate across the globe through our 15 international offices and 22 domestic offices whenever anti-Semitism comes up, and remembrance events across the country and the globe for the Holocaust, as well as political activism and lobbying. But I think one of the important elements of AJC's work that may not be as clear or direct, but I think is incredibly important in terms of Holocaust remembrance and activism on issues like this and bringing it into the public memory, especially for the next generation, is building relationships with people who are different from you. And AJC's work is very focused on building coalitions. We have a Muslim-Jewish alliance, we have a Latino-Jewish alliance, Black-Jewish relationships, and the Africa Institute reaches out to African diasporas within the US, and we take our Jewish leadership to the continent as well, to connect with people who are different, to learn about common concerns that we can build coalitions around and advocate together with.
And you went to Rwanda recently.
Yes, we took our leadership to Rwanda. It was our first destination for our leadership in the Africa Institute, and met with the president and the foreign minister. It was a very powerful experience for our Jewish leadership to connect on such a shared history, but also to bring it into the present and talk about issues that these women with me are going to share with you. The importance of not just seeing Rwanda as what happened then, but how it's a common thread that we're all connected to and we all have a responsibility to carry into the future.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Console, I want to build on something she mentioned, the work of AJC in terms of anti-Semitism. When you look around, you just turn on the news, there's always a case. It could be anti-Semitism, genocide denial, xenophobia, populism, different shades of the same brand of hate. How do you, as a survivor who lived through the consequences of these type of things, how do you feel? What do you think should be done? I was listening on the BBC the other day, Facebook saying, look, we spent billions of dollars trying to take down messages. YouTube says the same thing. But, it's still, it's kind of going on. What reflections can you share with us?
Can you hear me? I'm truly honored to be with this panel with my fellow survivor and you, and thank you for having me here today. Thank you for the question. So as a survivor, when the genocide happened, I was 14 years old, for those who don't know well. So it's really painful to see that, especially that many of us are still healing from the trauma of what we've experienced, and to see such extreme hatred, the same way we've seen that caused the genocide, what we've been through, it's really painful. And also for me, it encourages me more to do what I do, even though it's not very easy to tell the stories of what we've been through. But I think it's important also to encourage young people everywhere to be aware of such thing, and also through our testimonies that what happened could happen if nothing, if we don't prevent it early. So, and as Elie Wiesel said, when you listen to a witness, you become a witness. So the more they listen to us, I think they are going to be the ones to prevent such atrocities from occurring again. So,
wow. Is that one of the things that inspired you to write your book? I know it was a difficult process.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about the book. Tell us a bit about your story.
Yeah. To me, it was really a long journey. So I came in this country where I was really struggling a lot with what I've been through. So it has taken me more than 15 years to be able to really even think about what I've been through. So I struggle a lot, like what Celine said, with the trauma. And I was thinking a lot of the painful thing because I grew up in the western province of the country in Kibuye, where even now, this month, I was still hiding. I was still going through some of the painful, things happened to me. As a young lady myself, thinking what happened to me, one of the most painful things that I struggle a lot is the rape. Like many women and girls went through at that time. So I thought I was going to forget that, maybe somehow maybe I would block that, but the more time went on, the more the pain increased in me. So, and I was journaling a lot, writing my notes, the painful things I was carrying within myself. But then I realized that I needed to write about it. So, because especially for other women who went through similar rape, the assaults I've been through. So, and it has been really a relief. It's almost like a load was lifted off my shoulder when I wrote everything that I went through. So, and also it has helped my mother who survived with me. My dad was murdered, and my 3 younger brothers. So, and all the painful things that we've been through at that time during the 3 months. It was relief for me to write about it, but at the same time I wanted to help other survivors to be able to tell their stories and to show them that when you talk about it, also it helps you to heal, to start your journey of healing. So for most of us, some of us really, like Celine, for those who don't have any physical wounds, some of us also carry the invisible wounds, and some of them have both invisible, of course, and psychological wounds, and we needed to be able to heal from that. And also we realize also, like they say, the researchers have said that there's intergenerational trauma. So we need those who are going to be born from us to be able to never carry that much burden from us. So, and I think it's important for us to really tell these stories and be able to help the young people, young Rwandans, to learn from our experiences and be able to also, whenever we are not here, we are going to be the ones sharing these stories and be able to educate the world of what happened, especially nowadays, the rise of denier. So it's painful for survivors to hear someone denying what happened to us. It's almost like opening the wound again. So, yeah.
Well, and Celine, I mean, I can imagine when you put yourself out there and share your story, it's a vulnerable time. Does the fact that in Rwanda we have a government that has put in place kind of the right conditions, security and safety, that's the basic, physical safety of people, irrespective of who you are, equitable development and services that reach, across the country. Does that environment, did that help you to kind of feel ready, like, now I feel safe to now share my story? Maybe comment a bit on the context of where you share your story from.
Thank you. Yes, the environment where we live in now today, as a young woman, I'm now a businesswoman. I co-founded a consulting firm in human resource management, and I had a good education, and my voice is heard through many chambers, women chambers, business chambers, and I'm now able to take some time and really take care of me, so that I can continue and grow and contribute to the building of my nation. And one of the things that I would say that impacted me also was to work with Agahozo Shalom Youth Village. Most of you know them.
Is that a school? Is that a
It's a youth
center?
village that was founded by Anne Heyman and Seth. JC's here. He's the executive director of Agahozo Shalom, and so it's they were founded there from Jewish American couple, and the village was founded as a solution, as one of the solutions to help orphans that were in Rwanda and provide education and holistic wellness for the next generation. And I happened to work there as the director of HR, and through the programs that they were offering, trainings that they were offering in terms of how do we educate the young generation and provide a holistic education for them and wellness in terms of taking care of their mental, emotional, and educational needs. How do we help them? Through that, while I was going through the trainings, I was helped myself. And the 10-year-old in me started to heal and to feel concerned about that education. And through that, I was able to put myself out there, and I was encouraged actually to share my story and also to approach a counselor, a therapist, because I had heard about it through Agahozo Shalom Youth Village. We had a wellness center that was helping the young people. So that language in terms of therapy, in terms of seeking physical, mental health help was not foreign for me, because I have heard about it. I was seeing people going through some young people who were going through some hard time, accessing mental and psychological counseling sessions through the school. So it helped me as well to reach out to and to find help.
That is really excellent. And Melanie, when you consider that the genocide against the Tutsi was largely perpetrated by young people, and many times young people are the youth wingers of the political parties are sent to do the dirty jobs. What role do you see young people playing to reverse this thing, to kind of be agents of change for the positive and not for the negative? Maybe share some of your thoughts.
Sure. So I think what sets apart the younger generation is time. We have more time than the older generation fundamentally, and that means that sometimes I think younger people tend to want to take immediate action and maybe more likely to have a simplistic understanding of what's going on, especially very young people. But they're also very influential in their own social circles, and a groupthink can be powerful at any age, but maybe more particularly among teenagers before minds are at an adult level. I think for the younger generation, what's really important is, well, in my experience, it was learning history and context and being able to build up that understanding of what's going on around you and connect more of the dots. And then not jump straight to action, but to understanding and listening. And speaking with people who have gone through these kinds of events gives you more context. I think as a younger person, it's easier if it's more tangible, if you're connected to a story. And as we heard from the previous panel, narratives are at the center of this. And propaganda and comics and social media in particular, these are themes that are very much the language of young people as well as adults. It's a language we may be more skilled in, but that may become dangerous without the context. So I think for young people, it's one of the things motivating my work is to connect the dots, bring in more context and education early on through stories. So people are not looking immediately to act or react, but to ask questions behind what's going on.
Are you optimistic? Because I was reading 95% of young people, at least in America, are on social media. Many of them say they're in more than 4 or 5 platforms. Twitter, LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, but Instagram, Facebook, and others. And many of them say they spend more than 6 hours consecutively. That's the minimum, constantly on social media. Are you optimistic that our generation will be different and be able to stop that trend of hate online? And speak freely. I mean, what do you see? Do you see a positive trend, or do you see the reverse?
I tend to be optimistic. I think I've seen my generation be much more open to difference. and be able to bridge differences and connect with people who are different more easily because they've seen it modeled. I think that's one of the positives of social media is you have access to difference, and that makes a difference in how you imagine your own future and the people you might connect with. The thing that troubles me is where social media gets into silos and echo chambers where you only connect with people like you. And I do see a lot of young people wanting to be on the right side of issues and defriending anyone who thinks differently. And in that way, cutting off any difference and eroding their ability to talk and have a conversation with people who think differently and learn from that conversation.
Wow, that's a really powerful point. Maybe Facebook should eliminate the unfriend button or something. Do you guys want to comment on that? Social media. I mean, you're all on social media and you use it for positive. Consolea, I watch your videos, you're a motivational speaker. It can be a powerful vehicle, but I mean, again, it's so easy to sit in your room. Anyone can just start a YouTube channel and say whatever they want to say. You know, so how do we build that responsibility in young people, in our, younger brothers, even in ourselves? Because again, we tend to have that reflex. That's, I think, one of the downsides of our generation. When you're going through something, you want to post it immediately. In fact, a friend of mine was telling me, when they see something on the street, say someone falls down in the subway, the reaction is no longer to help, but it's to pull out the phone and get a video and post it, And we see that all the time here in New York and in other places, not only New York, where you find someone in a dire and desperate situation being filmed, and you ask yourself, who is that who's recording? Why are they not doing something? So maybe just comment on that impulse to project everything we're doing.
One thing I realize with the younger people is also they have a different language, a different way of speaking also through social media. You have also to learn that, to know how to reach out to them in their own language. So if you speak not in your own language, sometimes they won't even pay attention to what you're saying. They may not even care very much. So it's to know how to speak to them so that they would really pay attention. Because if you speak through their language, absolutely you're going to hear what you say. That's the reason why I also try to learn much about social media, using more hashtags, which hashtag is really trending. So, and then you reach out your message through the hashtag. So, and also try to be a little bit of like modern, so not necessarily. I'm not a millennial. I'm actually I just passed through millennial, so but I try to act as a millennial. So I'm 39 now, so but I behave like I don't know 30.
But they try to bridge that gap.
Yes, and then you're able to reach out to them, and then I'll have a conversation. That's what I do when I go in high schools, and I try to communicate through their language, and I educate myself. You educate yourself, and
what are some questions they ask you in high school when you go to high schools, for example, in America? Young people who don't know about Rwanda, and you give them this heavy story.
Yeah.
What are some things they ask you?
Sometimes I like to laugh a lot, so I try to have a little bit of humor. Mm-hmm. And when I speak to them, and they become curious of how I grew up, how is Rwanda, how you grew up as a young person there. So and then so you pull their attention to want to know what is like being a young person in Rwanda. So. And then you take them through the journey of what it was like, and then how the genocide happened, and then they ask you questions and what it was like, especially like me who was a teenager. You take them through that, and in their minds, you go in their head, they imagine. So, and if I was like constantly, what would I have done? So in that situation, and they ask you questions. Sometimes they ask me questions about. Because I was hiding in several places in the bushes, so it sounds, sometimes they kind of connect it with some horror movies they've heard or whatever, here in America. And it's because I try also to watch movies, so I try to watch some of the modern reality shows so that I can be able to understand how to reach out in their minds when I tell my story to them. So, and then they are able to kind of really able to learn about that. So, and then they know like what it was like hiding. I mean, from one place to another. Sometimes they ask me questions about my younger brother who was 18 months old. How were you able to make him not cry most of the time? So, and sometimes I'm amazed.
Your brother who?
My brother was he was murdered. He was murdered.
He was 18 months?
He was 18 months old. So, and but it's one thing that is hard for me to tell them is the rape, and also that I'm living the consequences of it, living with HIV. So, and I guess probably because of, I try to be also giving a positive, message to them that it's, despite all the painful memories, despite all the pain, but life continues, and I'm always able to, to continue to live with the pain. And because most of them have struggles in their lives too, so they suffer in their household, and they are able to, you help them to kind of open up and tell them to speak up. And speaking up is very important, not hiding what you are going through. And it's also another way of helping you to start your healing journey and be able to solve your issue you're going through in your family or in the world. So through social media also, I tell them that they need to speak out. When you speak out, especially silence, I remind them silence favors perpetrators. So you need to speak out in order for you to help your world be a better place, not only for you, it's for everyone else. When you are able to walk on the street freely and happy, so it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful feeling. So, and who doesn't want to have that feeling within yourself, that peace, that joy when you are able to enjoy life. Every beautiful thing the world, has here. We have beautiful things, and who doesn't want to enjoy that? So, and I think it helps. And when you try to explain that. I think it's the more you do that, the more you're helping them to open their minds that it's important for everybody, not for certain people. Right. It's for all of us. So
as human beings as well.
And peace is a gift to everybody. So you give to each other. So
amazing. That's one thing I know about Consi. You're always laughing and smiling. It's one thing I want to learn from you, really. Celine, you can say something if you want to build on that as well.
Yeah, I wanted to build on that and saying, in my view and the way I see, for example, my story, when I wanted to publish my book, I was fortunate to partner with Envision Rwanda. They're here. They're young people from Rwanda who also think their stories through art. And so it was very, very good for me to partner with them, because I didn't want my story to be just about something that happened and that would speak to the older generation, but I wanted my sister, who is here, to be telling my story in the coming years.
She's in here? Yeah,
she's in here.
Nice, welcome.
She was born after the genocide, but this is also her story, and I want really to partner and to continue to work and to share my story with the younger generation, because I know for sure that they will be the one telling that story to their children and the children of their children as well.
Have you guys thought of making a film or documentary or something visual, no pressure, but I know, that will really minister, really reach out to younger people?
I think documentaries, one of the things that I think it will be another way of telling the story. There's so many platforms you can tell the story, not necessarily in writing. So through films, documentaries, or other. That's the reason why I encourage survivors, not survivors, Rwandans in general, to tell the stories themselves. You can't allow also. You need to also be able to tell your story in your own way, and whether it's through film, whether it's through writing, whether it's through art. You know, we've seen the artists who are doing an incredible job on that. So I think we are all able to share in our own way. So it's important that as ourselves tell our own stories. So it's another way of also encouraging the younger generation to learn how to do that. So
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you. We will come back, but let me open it to the audience for some interaction. I'm sure we have some questions. Anyone? JC, we'll go first. Let's take maybe 3. Okay, the gentleman close to me. One on the other side. Okay, you'll go also with that. So we have 3 questions. JC in the far right. Let's keep it brief and short. It can be a comment as well, but let's keep it brief.
Thank you. I'm JC from Akosa Shalom Youth Village. My question is, how do we empower young people like the ladies on the panel right there to really insist that how can they tell more of their stories? Because obviously from the previous panel that we saw, the justice system has failed. Rwanda, I was looking at the slides earlier by the numbers, $2 billion spent, 62 cases. I think Mr. Martin Goga was talking about more than 1,000 indictments. And so you can see that the international system has really failed and will continue to fail. So how do we lay more efforts on supporting the youth to tell their stories through art, through documentaries, through storytelling, and so on and so forth. And so thanking also the AJC for supporting such a platform, really to ensure that youth can speak. And particularly there are so many, Consola and Celine represents like thousands who can't speak because of the traumatic experiences.
Thank you, JC. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll take the gentleman right here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cyril Epstein. So post-traumatic stress disorder is very common in disasters and wars and what you've gone through. And of course, you can have displaced emotion and displaced anger, whether towards yourself or others, and we all know how it can disrupt personal relationships and relationship building. Can you comment how that's been difficult as a society to build community, and to build a sense of community when so many people have post-traumatic stress disorder?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah. You take the gentleman. You don't have to stand it. It's okay. You can have a seat. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Basuni, David Basuni, a former senior UN staff, and I come from South Sudan. My intervention is in 2 parts. One was really intended for the previous panel, and then of course I'll come to the youth and the younger people. We live in a very enlightened era. Technology, information, awareness, and all that. And much is being done, as our colleagues present. And we're very thankful to the government and people of Rwanda for keeping this effort alive, of reminding people at least once a year that genocide is a threat to everybody, not only to them. But my worry and what I'm looking for as assurance is that if you look at the trend of awareness and people accepting that genocide is a real danger and there is impunity and that we're not making progress and that we may be as worse off now as the Rwanda genocide, or even worse than the Holocaust. So I'm wondering in what way can we really enhance the will of governments, because it really comes down to that. And let's take Africa, for example. It's an example, one of the worst examples we have of where impunity is at its height. Nobody cares. Just take the case of Sudan, South Sudan. Well, just last week or the last month, the government has hired a lobbying firm in this country, led by a former US ambassador, to work against creating and establishing the hybrid court, which would be to try genocide. So my question is, what do we do with governments?
Thank you.
So that's the part, that is the first panel, and
We still have some panelists.
whoever are remaining here
Yeah,
can answer
they can
that.
go. Maybe just to the youth, you can give.
Yes, to the youth.
Quick one, yeah.
I worry that we have people like you who have survived the genocide and have taken the mantle and challenge, to witness and to continue to work. But I am worrying about the millennials and also about youth who do not seem to care much about the real issues of that touch the conscience. They are more concerned about the immediate problems of today and how they will fare tomorrow. So I want some assurance from you that you three who are millennials or close to millennials can assure us that what we're speaking now you are going to take seriously and we're going to continue with that to the next century or whatever.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So really 3 heavy questions. Maybe let's start with JC's question. How to empower young people to tell more of their story, in the context that, again, justice may have failed, and even where it's there, it is long delayed. What are some things, have you found areas where you feel you need more support, to get your story out there? Anyone who's ready can. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jesse. I think it was also meant for the public, anyone who could contribute. But one of the key elements that I think is very, very powerful is to continue to be present, to give an ear to the survivors and to encourage them to write through people who have written as well. Like if you know young people who are doing great projects about storytelling or about any form of memory preservation, invite them to a congregation where there are a lot young people in meetings or any events that are there to share their story and encourage them to do the same. That's the first thing I will think about. And the second thing, I think you asked about the area where we can get more help or more support. I personally, I am now an activist for mental health. I really want to continue to focus on talking about mental issues and psychological issues, and that it's okay not to be okay sometimes, but it's okay to reach out and to get help. And I'm looking for partners in that field and to learn a lot about what has been done in other countries with regards to PTSD, with regards to drugs addiction that are a result of many issues that result of war. And I want to learn a lot about what has been done in previous years in many countries, and to be able to bring it back and continue to support what the efforts that have been put in place by the government and the civil society to respond to the question. Maybe I can continue.
Yeah, continue with that. Yeah. You talked about displaced emotion.
Yes.
How, in the context where the country is traumatized, how does it rebuild? And I'd like maybe Ambassador also, if you don't mind, to comment on that. As a nation, how do you rebuild when there's that mass trauma? What has been done, because there's a lot that has been done, so she will take up after you. Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. Well, right after the genocide were immediate response that were provided through all communities in Rwanda with regards to counseling and psychological help. But then 25 years later today, I think you as a physician, you know that most of the PTSD comes after, few years after survival mode, after few years, 15 years or 20 years or 5 years. But today, what the government is doing, in the past month, I think there was an opening, a big opening on national trauma and mental health awareness. It was very big, and it started with the First Lady opening up and also opening the session and also encouraging Rwandans to take advantage of the facilities that are provided, because the first issue that we were dealing with were lack of awareness. Knowledge of, okay, what is PTSD in first place? What is depression? What are the key things that can happen after 20 years or 25 years or 15 years? So that there are a lot of initiatives from young people as well who have started to bring down from PTSD is like a term from physician is big. Some people will not understand what it means, but what are the symptoms of PTSD or depression or trauma, and people have started now to ask questions in Kinyarwanda about what it means in their society to deal with that. So maybe...
Fantastic. Ambassador.
Why don't you and then come back later?
Okay. Yes, sure. Consulate, please, go ahead. Yeah.
You come back later.
I can speak on the first one she mentioned was about...
In terms of displaced emotion and trauma?
Yeah, myself, personally, because what I talk about mostly, it's about rape and sexual assault during the genocide. So, and which is also one of the also difficult thing for many women now to, especially those who are younger, to be able to talk about it. So there are many women like myself who are young who are not able to yet to get to a point where to speak about it, and it's very painful also coming in a culture where talking about your body and what happened to your body is not culturally in the context is not easy. So even myself, it has taken me really a while to be able to get to that point. Not only you went through that, you are living with the consequences every day. I take a pill. That pill reminds me of what happened to me. So psychologically, I had to really I need to heal from in mind so that I will be able to accept, even though I don't know if I can use that term, but it's and I think it's very individually we cope differently. So and I'm so grateful that I was able to speak out. The reason why I also speak more about it is because I want to help many of them to be able to speak out so that they can seek help, like mental health, and be able to reach out to be able to be helped. So because there are several, not only that there are several consequences, not only living with HIV, you have a child born from rape. So, and those kids also are living with the consequences of what their mothers went through, both mother and a child. So it's really a healing really will take a long time, and we need to do something about it, keep doing something about it so that we can help our people feel better. So and I think and that's the reason why we do what. So I call myself as women's activist, so on women. So and if they can see me, when I do speak about that, I think of so many who are not able to speak. So and I want to be able to contribute to that, and along with others, there's a fellow survivor here who went to a Gauzo Shalom recently. She led women to retreat. Those women who went through rape, and many of them were able to speak out for the first time. Their experience. So when they see each other together, they're able to tell, to be able to help each other. So because when you're alone in your own world, sometimes it doesn't help. So and it's important to do all these initiatives, many different initiatives, so that we can be able to help heal. So
right.
Healing takes a long time. So yeah.
Thank you, Console. Melanie, I'd like you to comment on Mr. Bassioni's question, the desensitization that young people have towards injustices around the world, Could it be information overload? We're constantly on our phones to the extent that we lose that emotional and moral imperative to want to act, you know? You can comment on that.
When I first saw this question was also in your program originally, a question about how to engage people when human suffering seems very distant from your experience, your life, and anyone connected to you. And I think that does resonate with me because I grew up in many different places and in rural places where there was great poverty and some violence. And to me, the answer to your question is not even as much about the violence or the conflict, but the distance, I think, is the key factor that gets in the way. And when it comes to my experience of trying to translate what's going on, what my life was like in East Africa to Americans who've never traveled, it's a similar problem. It's how do you even begin to give someone context that they're lacking? And that building that bridge, it really has to do with personal connections and telling stories and recognizing common experiences and shared experiences. I think one of the things that I've learned from working in this Jewish organization is also that some of the barrier for distance is that things seem far away in the past or far away in terms of legal issues or conflict. And bringing the immediacy of these issues into the present. I was thinking of an event held at the UN to commemorate the Holocaust. And for me personally, that was an experience realizing this wasn't just a commemoration of things that happened in the past. It was bringing up what's happening now, similar events, and the lessons that are equally valid now. I think that's part of the story that needs to be told.
Thank you very much. Really good. Let's take 3 more questions, and then we can...
There's one aspect of the question, I think.
Should I let the first panel? Okay, yeah. Let's let...
There is an aspect of the
Yeah,
question that...
let's put... Mr. Basioni asked a question. I think, Honorable Speaker, would you like to respond? He suggested that we seem to be worse off now than where we used to be. How can we enhance the will of governments, the political will to act? And he cited a case from South Sudan and so on.
Well, thank you. I may not refer specifically to the case of South Sudan, but it is because I don't have enough information about it. But it is representative of a general situation. It's all about the politics and how politics influences decisions we make, some of which can be dangerous to societies. So, we have to appreciate what we have achieved so far. When we are discussing about justice, there is a lot we have not done, but there is what we have done. And what we have done is part of the remedial process, which is continuous. So I don't think I can have a clear-cut answer on how we can deal with that situation. But in any case, genocide is a crime. And really, what matters, there must be people who are willing to stand against the genocide ideology. Because even those who stopped the genocide in Rwanda were not the biggest in numbers. They were not the best equipped, but they stopped it. So the critical mass that can be there constantly and willing to face the situation in all its dimensions, politically and otherwise, is all that we need. I don't think there is any magical solution to that. Those who are willing to continue to speak for the right position in politics is all that we need. And if we can have more, the better, but I think the willingness is what matters most. So the politics will continue to influence decisions, some of which can be dangerous to us, but it's also our role to try and direct politics in the right direction.
Thank you. Really good response. Any other panelists? Okay, let's take a set of questions, second set of questions. Again, I'll start on this side. Anyone? Okay, let's go.
Miss Global Peace.
Miss Global Peace. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm so grateful to be here. I thank God every single day because I survived the genocide in Rwanda. My parents were killed, my grandpa, my uncle, my mom, she was killed in a refugee camp. I never get a chance to write a book about my story because I'm still dealing with trauma of how my mom was killed. However, to overcome my own trauma, I established a non-profit called Why Do I Exist? WhyDoIExist.org is my website. I remember after surviving genocide, some of my friends used to ask me, every time we meet on the street in Kigali, they used to ask me, are you not crazy yet? I told them, why are you asking me if I'm not crazy? They were telling me that because of what you went through in Rwanda during the genocide, and then what you went through in the refugee camp. If we went through the half of what you went through, by now we're supposed to be crazy on the street. So I used to tell them, it's you, not me, because God protected me, but God protected my thinking, my mind. So to help other people helping me, to help survival of genocide, when I was doing it on honoring the promise, actually I promised it to God during the genocide when I was jumping over the body of the people. I never knew that I was going to survive. I thought I was going to die like everybody. So I committed a vow to God. I said, Lord, if you protect my life and I survive, I will help orphans. So when I survived, I said I have to fulfill my promise to God. Even to come to America was my dream. I prayed to God, I said, Lord, if you bring me to America, I will fulfill my desire, my heart desire to help orphans. So God brought me here. I was chosen between 600 applications in the world. That's how I came to America on a scholarship. So what I would say is, after overcoming the trauma, the genocide, we go through a lot. We get stigmatized. Sometimes we have to fight to speak up. I salute my sisters on the panel to be able to come this far, to tell your story and to write your book. Really kudos for you. You did a good job. So now my question is, how are we going to use our story to heal the heart wounded of many survivors? Because they're dying because of trauma. I remember one day I was speaking to one of ambassadors to United Nations. He told me that his assistant died, crushed here in America because of trauma. She was 35 years old. This trauma healing training I started to do in Rwanda was back in 2012 because I saw how we have to deal with the trauma. So I ask you, how can we use the power of social media? Because I wrote a book, The Power of Social Media. I share 5 ways to use to stand out from the crowd. How can we use this powerful communication tool to heal our heart wounded, our loved ones, and then to help people around the world?
To be the voice of the voiceless.
To be the voice of the voiceless, and also to inspire them to speak up. My last comment, I would love to acknowledge Professor.
Make it brief, please, and then we can move
Yeah,
on.
I would love to acknowledge Professor for establishing the first ever public library in Rwanda. Because of that, ignorance is no longer in the mind of our people. Because the genocide happened because they were only using a radio. Government was like orchestrating everything. Now because of a public library, people will get access to education around of the world. So Rwandan people will speak up. I was upset that this is Professor Hoffman, Zachary, Kuchigi Rwanda Orphan Support Project Certificate of Appreciation in recognition of your effort in providing knowledge and resources to the people of Rwanda by creating and building the first ever public library.
Okay.
We acknowledge you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Second question, the back, then yes. Let's make it brief so that everyone has a chance to, Go ahead, sir.
I'm Rohan Dominic, actually from Sri Lanka. I'm now working as my representative of my organization here in UN. My question is, 2 days back we have commemorated the 10th year of our genocide. We call it genocide, but the whole world is denying it. Yeah, and it was a long years of war, and then war came to an end on May 18th, 2009. Now, my question is now for many countries like Rwanda or South Africa, even Holocaust, after the Holocaust, the country was able to get freedom and people were able to get healed. At least the process of healing has started. Psychologically, they were helped. Economically, they were able to develop themselves, and there are possibilities of education and all. But in our case, we are crushed, and we are still under suppression, under the oppression of the government, the majority people. So there's no possibility of
Question?
So how can people like that, who are under oppression after long years of undergoing killings and all those things, how they can get healed? Because there's always the situation remains the same.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your question. Thank you. Last question. Take it from that side. Yeah, Ambassador, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. After the Rwandan genocide, we heard the word never again. Then 5 years later, it happened again in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And then we heard the word again, never again. It happened again in the fall. And we still hear never again. We've also heard about the huge cost of indifference. And we've heard about one of the panelists here, she's sitting there, I love what your presentation. And she said that the US system is beginning to try to develop the early warning system vis-a-vis early action. My question is this: in the face of unhealthy use of veto power, what is the guarantee that genocide will not occur again? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very UN question, so we'll but go ahead, panelists, feel free. There's no question that's off there. Let's start with the lady's question, the founder of Kuchimbiho Foundation, Why Do I Exist? She's asking about how to use your voice for others and to empower others. How do you feel that you have that mission, that when you share stories on behalf of other people, is it, go ahead, Consuelo.
I think like anyone else, it's our duty to use our voice in making sure that we tell the world what happened. So the only way of preventing the future atrocities is to learn from the past. So for us, it's our duty, it's our responsibility also to make sure the memories of our loved ones are alive. So to make sure what happened is not forgotten, and at the same time also, helping our fellow survivors, all of us, to heal from the wounds. So, and I think it's our duty, all of us, to really do this. It's very important. And I call upon everybody here also to go along with everyone. So it's our duty, all of us, to make sure our world is a better place. So we can live in a world where there's no genocide anymore. So.
Celine, in 1 minute.
In 1 minute, what I wanted to say is any seed that is planted, that is hatred or discrimination or any form of violence against human being starts as a small seed in mindset, so in personal journeys. So what I want to tell the young people here, the youth here, is there are things that may seem insignificant, starting with bullying at school, as simple as bullying at school, as simple as I don't like this person because of this and this, and start to have two sides and start to hate each other. It starts like that. It's a seed of hatred that grow and is being it grows into people's mind and it becomes a big thing, like war or genocide against any particular population. So my voice is, and my responsibility is to continue to share my story and to partner with young people who are doing great work in terms of if they are exhibiting their art, it's in their own voices, but they have been inspired by our stories because they were not here during the genocide against the Tutsi, but they heard about the story, and we have to give them platform to express it in their own talents and in their own voices. And I think it's not a one person or a one generation responsibility, but it has to be passed on to the next generation. But we need to make sure that they use their own voices and their own talents to carry on this story.
Thank you, thank you. And let me remind the audience, Celine has copies of her book outside. Please, I encourage you to pick up a copy. She'll sign it for you. But more than that, our story really will get out there if you only read it and share it with others. Melanie, let me give you the question on the gentleman from Sri Lanka. I know AJC is essentially an advocacy organization. How do you advocate for those who are not in a position to share what they're going through? Can you comment on that?
I think I'll just give a simple answer that connects with what we've said before. We use our own network and our own connections to elevate the needs of others and to make their case and to bring their voices into the spaces we have access to, both in the UN, on the Hill, in capitals across the globe, and with our young professionals organization, high school students, just to bring those voices in and give access and advocate where we can.
And just quickly, do you feel that the United Nations is still a body you can rely on, namely the Security Council, when you see all the politics involved and veto power, misuse or use of it? It's a tough question, but what's your view? I mean, as a young person, how do you
It's a tough question, and I think I am not very qualified to answer it. My view is that for us, it's learning the politics and trying to make those shifts and changes that can long distance have an effect, and that's what we need to work on.
Thank you. I thought you were going to say we should have an African country on the Security Council, or two, to balance it. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I want to thank my distinguished panelists. Again, Celine is here, Console is here. You can meet and interact at the end. Before we close, I'd like to also just give it back to the MC, Mr. Newman. Thank you. Thank you very much.
This has been also a remarkable panel in such a different way. This brings to an end our conference, but the last word we would want to hear from Madam Ambassador. And thank you all very, very much for having come and dedicated this much time to this commemoration. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really in one word. I think I promise that I will come back later to the question that was put up by the gentleman here, and regarding how do we cope in a society and in a country such as ours, where a genocide was committed by neighbors, by family members. We still have to live side by side in the very same environment, physical environment. So I think there is no easy response to that. In reality, it is about putting in place a system that doesn't tolerate any longer impunity. And as was said by the speaker, the genocide ideology, planting the genocide ideology took decades, and doing it itself also takes a long time. But in the process of undoing it, there are certain pillars that have to be put in place and are very clear. It's very clear today that there is an absolute zero tolerance to impunity. Now, when it comes to the human reconstruction itself, the human side of the story and the trauma, that also takes a long process at individual levels, and I think that the incredibly resilient young ladies we listened to, I mean, both Céline and Consolé, showed that, I mean, what a process it is at individual level. At country level, also, it takes a lot. It takes, first of all, really putting a system where support is provided, psychological support is provided, but also recognizing that there is a trauma and going beyond and above the stigma that usually comes with a trauma, understanding that embracing that trauma is actually part of the process of gaining strength. Of course, we are still very limited in terms of capacities, and Céline referred to the campaign, the awareness campaign that was launched this month. We have built capacity in the last 25 years, but we are very open to any possibilities of accelerating and increasing that capacity. So if any of you here has also some connections towards that, we are very interested in that, because it is the needs are simply huge. The needs are huge, both on the side of the survivors, but we see also trauma on the side of the perpetrators, and we see during a period such as this period of commemoration, we have symptoms that showed us that we still have to continue to do the work we do to uproot the genocide ideology. We will see incidents such as cows of people being cut, macheted. That shows in itself that there is someone around there that actually, because they are not able to express that vis-a-vis their neighbor, they are not able to harm their neighbor, so they find a way of harming what is so dear to their neighbor. And the cows that have been targeted are cows of survivors, belonging to survivors. So there are elements, there are incidents like those that show us that, well, this is a work we need to continue to do. At the same time, as also has been said by Professor Zach, it is never again has to be an action. It has to go beyond words. It means that yes, it has to be thought on all fronts, where there are narrative of hatred. We have to fight that, but with the narrative of getting together. And in the case of Rwanda, we made some very difficult choices. Living together after a genocide is a choice that seems to be an impossible choice to many. However, there was no alternative to that choice. So we made that choice to live together, but it is a choice that is very well informed. Also, what needs to be done to make that living together possible, meaning to give enough trust to the people that they're safe, that those services are provided by the government. Security. People know that they live in a safe environment. People know that they can sleep and wake up the following day and go by their activities without having to wonder if the family next door that is a family of released perpetrators, if that family will still be a threat to them. So those services are assured and provided by the government However, we need to continue as individuals, now that you are aware of that, we really count on all of you, not only to share the story, and the truth doesn't just come out in itself, it needs to be told. It needs to be told, and it needs to be channeled, to be conveyed, and we will count on all of you to do just that. As to the Security Council, my dear brother here, his question regarding the Security Council, I just feel that I have to address that as well. The paralysis of the Security Council tells us at least things. First of all, that the more paralyzed, the more irrelevant the Security Council becomes. Because if the Security Council cannot assure, fulfill its main mission, which is the maintenance of international peace and security, then the Security Council is irrelevant. Now, there are two ways of addressing the irrelevance of the Security Council. First, it is really to reform it seriously. It means that it's almost no longer possible to postpone, to keep postponing the reform of the Security Council. Second, we will see increasingly happen what has been happening, meaning bodies such as the General Assembly will start also handling issues of peace and security. Simply because the membership, the broad membership is not growing. It has been, I think, in the first council, one of the panelists alluded to the fact that when it came to the mechanism, I don't know exactly, the exact was the independent mechanism in the case of Syria. We will see more of that. So in reality, unless the Security Council get to understand that message, and the Security Council will not be able to stop the entire membership from taking action. The Security Council members, the 5 permanent members, can always call for a vote. But it means that all the other 193 members will use their vote as they wish to. So we will see increasingly that happen. And there is nothing that the 5 permanent members are more scared of than seeing a General Assembly that is increasingly seized of peace and security matters. So that is a tough choice that is put to them, but that is also to us to understand the authority that we have, even if we are not a permanent member of the Security Council, even if we don't have a veto right. I've had the opportunity a few weeks ago to engage with the non-permanent members of the Security Council. If the 10 non-permanent members who are elected members, and therefore who have the legitimacy of having been elected by the entire membership, if the 10 elected members come together on a specific issue, they do have a veto power as well. Because there is the rules of the Security Council are such that the 5 permanent members who have veto power, there is no decision they can act on except using their veto power. There is no other decision they can make without the 10 other members. So I think we'll see more of that happening increasingly. It is, in my view, the time right now, we are at a turning point where increasingly we will see matters of peace and security being brought to the General Assembly. Unless the Security Council gets more serious and stop from doing geopolitics even in matters of genocide. One needs to remember that while the genocide was being executed, in 1994, the concern of the United States was to not use the word genocide. That was the concern. Why? Because using the word genocide would have triggered the responsibility to act. And a conversation that was taking place at the end, a session of the Security Council that took place towards the end of April, the main concern was just to avoid, to ensure that the word genocide will not be used. There were already hundreds of thousands that had been executed by the time, and that was the main concern. So and on that, there was an understanding with the other permanent members of the Security Council. So the blame cannot even be put only on one single permanent member, because none of the other permanent members stood up to say, this is absolutely wrong. None. So the most powerful members did actually completely, they felt their responsibility. And all of us, we had family members. Those who were not in Rwanda at the time, we had family members in Rwanda. And when you were trying to convince people to go even in neighboring countries, their responses were, well, we have the UN mission everywhere. I mean, you exaggerate. Nothing can happen to us, not in the presence of the UN, because there was the UN mission there. The first thing that the UN mission did when the execution started, the first thing that the UN mission did was to just reduce almost to nil the small force that General Romeo Dallaire had. To move it from 2,500 peacekeepers to less than 300 peacekeepers. So clearly sending a signal that they were allowing the genocide to take place. So I think it is all these elements that, all this information we need to be aware of, but also be informed ourselves and understand how each one of us has the power has actually a way of standing up. And while the world powers were behaving that way, a non-world power, a member that didn't have a veto power, then 3 members who didn't have a veto power, they stood up. They stood up, denouncing what was going on. They stood up, they looked for an action, they were neutralized. But then one can think, maybe if it was today, they would have mobilized the General Assembly to take some more action, because then by today people would have understood that no, the Security Council is not going to act. We know how they have operated in a similar situation. So I think it is all those type of lessons that we would like people to understand, but also understand that each one of you have the authority to hold your government accountable. But you can only hold your government accountable if you have the right information. We live in a world where alternative facts, it's become very difficult for people to understand what is real, what is not real. So inform yourself, and there is a simple way of informing yourselves, the survivors. So when you want to know, they are very specific about their stories and circumstances. They will tell you where, when, how. They will tell you exactly how they survived. They will be able to tell you about who were their neighbors. So they will be very specific, but also scholars, such as Professor Zads, also those who worked in the justice, such as Simon, such as Martin Goga, the speaker. There are so many that have their own experience of the part of justice or the part of memory or the part of the politics that allow genocide to happen. So inform yourself, because it's only by informing yourself that you will be also able to start digging deeper and say, well, first of all, in my own state, in my own county, I want to know, are there perpetrators who are just roaming and living a quiet life around? So once you know, you're informed about them, then you say, hold on a minute, you ask your representative, why are they held accountable for what they did? And I think that is also, it is probably an instrument we don't use sufficiently. It is to expose the wrongdoers and expose the wrongdoing. We have to expose them. Never feel as if you are powerless. Expose what you know, and expose the truth. Challenge people who are telling you stories. Ask them to be specific. We also live in a world today where another trend that we see is that when you are far from Rwanda, many people will tell you they are survivors. They will tell you they are survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi. Ask them details. Ask them details. Ask them to specifics. Simply, and for one reason, not because you want to pin people down, but because the truth is part of prevention. It is important to not allow the truth to be tampered with. The survivors will not do that. We will do that systematically. The survivors, when it is where they come from, they will do that. But I will do that systematically. And I will ask you to do that. You meet with people simply because they will come, they will tell you stories because they know they are in an environment where you don't know the story of Rwanda. Ask them specifics. And do check with us. If you are not absolutely certain, do check with us. It's simple. We have the collective memory that we are putting together. So do check with us. And you have to understand, we come from a country that has forgiven the unforgivable. So when we are down lies, it's not because that is the worst crime. No, we have released the people who killed thousands of people. We're chasing down lies because we know the danger of that. We know their danger. So it's not something we can tolerate. The telling the truth is part and parcel of the prevention, is part and parcel of never again made real. I thank you so very much.